Good evening. I'm Harry Keeling. On behalf of the Alaskan Aviation Safety Foundation and Alaska Public Media, welcome to Hangar Flying. I hope you all have been able to tune in the past two episodes because we've been talking to John Wight, who is currently an aviation professor at UAA. Last time he described an incredible situation that he was involved in where he was flying in South Africa and diverted into Madagascar because of weather, and what turned out was unbelievable. And the courage that he showed in the next 7 years, he landed there. He was taken prisoner over time, and in my estimate, just as a political prisoner for no wrongdoing, just a political pawn. But he spent 7 years in this African prison before he was released. So let's listen to the rest of the story. John, welcome back.
Thank you very much, Harry.
You talked about conditions, which sounded horrible. Okay. You talked about your dad trying to rescue you. Were there other people in the cell with you?
There were. You know, that varied a lot, Harry. When we first got captured, the three of us were kept in a cell. And then we were put, we spent some time in their big cells. They had these cells with literally 3 layers of bunks and about 200 people in a cell that should have accommodated probably 40 or less. So massive overcrowding. Your space on the bunk, in fact, was like 18 inches. So you could only lie on your side, and then you couldn't turn over because you'd be disturbing the guy next to you. But, and then we went through a lot of different prisons after the escape.
So one of the things that amazes me is you really went through some hardships and deprivation for 7 years, but you managed to keep your health, and by the time you were released, you were back flying with, and I think you maintain a Class 1 physical today. How do you account for that?
I don't know, really. I kind of just live life, and obviously I enjoy life, and I don't think there's any particular secret about keeping a first-class medical. It's probably mostly luck, but yeah, I do still have a first-class medical.
Were you able to exercise when you were in prison?
In some situations, yes. When I was alone in one prison after the escape, and I managed to set up a parallel bar and get some weights and did some exercises, yes. So, and did a bit of running around the courtyard. So,
I've got so many questions, but one thing I want to make sure we do, in front of you is a book that your wife wrote, and I would, it's called The Stolen Years, and I would highly recommend it to any of our audience. It goes into detail of this incredible story of John's, and it's called The Stolen Years. John, let's bring this to a close. How did you finally, how did they finally, or why did they finally release you?
Well, we were sentenced to 5 years for their overflying the country, which we actually had authority to do, and then we were sentenced to an additional 2 years for the escape. So after 7 years we were released, but during that whole period we never knew whether we would be released. There was never nobody ever told us anything until, in fact, a few days before the release, and they came in and said, "You guys are going," and we still found it hard to believe. And we were just flown out on Air Madagascar to Mauritius, where we met with our families.
So I don't think, you and I have talked about this, but I don't think we shared this with the audience, but talk a little bit about the kind of the political pawn situation that you were placed in, that they were trying to get Nelson Mandela released and exchange of, how do you look back on that?
Well, you know, it would have been nice if they'd done an exchange, but when we came back to South Africa, we were interviewed by the Minister of the Minister of Foreign Affairs, which is like your Secretary of State in the States, and their argument was we couldn't do anything with a prisoner swap because if we'd done that, then any South African anywhere in the world would have been in danger. So they couldn't do it.
But you're the one that suffered for it.
Apparently.
Well, John, I got to tell you, it's a real honor to have gotten to know you. to hear your presentation, to have you on the program tonight. And I've got to tell you that I admire your courage, and I admire the story that you tell. And I would offer, ladies and gentlemen, that here's a man that loves aviation, that grew up with aviation. And I mean, the irony of diverting for weather. I mean, you know, we talk about diverting for weather a lot, but in this case, the consequences were untold and pretty severe. But it's great having you on the show, and I hope that you all enjoyed it. And I hope you'll tune in next time. And also, as we get to the end of the year, I'd ask you to go on our website and renew your membership for 2016. And have a good Christmas and holiday season, and be sure to fly safe.